essentially at this stage you can ignore the news completely. Because, again, the news is supposed to be reactive. It's supposed to provoke a response. Greetings, this is Eugene the Philosopher, the greatest living philosopher after the unfortunate passing of Quentin Robert de Nameland, who has been the greatest living philosopher before me. In this video I wish to examine how information, and more particularly the news, is processed. And partly I've already examined this question in my videos I Know Better and how your skepticism makes you easier to control. I'm gonna link them in the description. But here I wish to sort of summarize this approach in a way where we have like 3 stages of news perception, if you wish. So the very first level of news perception is emotional. It's an emotional reaction to what is happening in the media. And like, you know, the media message is itself, by design, emotionally charged. So it provokes your natural emotional reaction. Hence, you react to it directly as intended on this first level. Just by, again, inciting some emotion. Well, it's actually the news that incites the emotion in you. So it's basically a straight knee-jerk response, if you wish, just as planned by the directors or designers of the news. And it's literally a technology, as you may know. It's like Pavlov's dog kind of thing, if you know what I mean. Like, it's actually, in fact, it's so technological that we know, we feel, you know, when the news is poorly done, because we lack this emotional response, if you wish. So it's like a drug. It's addictive, actually, because again, it spikes some very, very strong internal response on this first level of perception. Again, I repeat. So an example would be something like CNN says Russia will invade Ukraine. Okay, and it incites like a very strong emotional response. Like, how so? I mean, it's so evil and despicable and whatever, malevolent, what they're doing, or something like that. And obviously the huge uproar in the social media is happening as follows from this. Twitter is obviously the best place to spread this sort of negative emotion, as has been shown by some studies, I think. So yeah, this is supposed to work on a literal physiological level to not only catch your attention, which is one of the main issues today, if you wish, again, social media oriented reality. You need to catch some people's attention because there's so much information that basically whatever you say will get lost otherwise, right? If you don't focus on catching people's attention. But that's only one half of the issue, right? To catch somebody's attention. The second part is to grab it, right? To hold it, at least for some time. And here again, this emotional response is what grabs people's attention, right? You not only are giving the drug to the person so they feel good, but they also get addicted to it. They get grabbed by it, right? And then you become their drug dealer, if you know what I mean. So yeah, and this type of news, especially with regards to what I just said, with grabbing the attention, tend to work in waves, and tend to be forgotten, by the way. So what people were concerned like 10 years ago, if you read the news headlines, you would think like, what the hell? Like, it doesn't make any sense. How could people be so concerned with this in the moment? All right. So yeah, it's like a drug addiction. It's very in the moment, it's very physiological. But that's only the first level of cognition, of perception of news, if you wish. The second level, supposedly more rational than the first one, is when you say, okay, well, the simple knee-jerk reaction is wrong, and maybe I should step backwards a little bit and analyze it actually. And maybe it's actually a diametrically opposite thing is correct. So it's still essentially the same paradigm. So you're still playing the game of, newsmakers, whoever they are, but you're just posturing against them, basically. That's the difference. So an example of that would be something like, CNN says Russia will invade Ukraine. Well, it means that in reality, Russia will not invade Ukraine. Because, well, CNN is evil and maybe Russia is good, or whatever other optional motivations you may have. So yeah, it's basically the second stage represents a more sophisticated Pavlov's dog, if you wish. So the knee-jerk Pavlov's dog hears a bell, it thinks that it's gonna be fed, it runs to the whatever kitchen or other place, but every now and then it gets fed, every now and then it gets beaten. And on the second stage, a more sophisticated Pavlov's dog says, I hear a bell, they want to beat me, right? They're baiting me to the kitchen to beat me, so I'm not going there, right? Even though I might get fed there, but I might get beaten as well, and more likely I'm gonna get beaten, alright? Something like that. So it's still a completely 100% reactive behavior. It may not be directly physiological, at least initially. So, you know, it's this proverbial, oh, I'm woken up, you know, even before it was hijacked by SGWs. So I'm woken up means like, oh, I don't believe the mainstream lies anymore, right? It's this huge revelation that some people allegedly have sometime in their life. And after that, they became this more sophisticated Pavlov's dog, right? They're saying, well, whatever media says is wrong, essentially. They still look at the media, they still read the news, they just think it's the opposite, right? As I've said in one of the videos I mentioned here, like if CNN says the water is wet, it means it should be dry, right? But, so it is kind of not physiological initially, because you have to stop. Again, I'm referring to my definition of consciousness, is like one of the definitions I've given previously in my Onion of Aliens Part 3, see the link in the description, is that it's the ability to stop your instincts, right? So you have this knee-jerk reaction, but you deliberately halt it for a bit and think, right? And maybe choose a different path. So the different path would be not to go to the kitchen to be potentially beaten, not believe that the water is wet, whatever CNN says about it. And, but it's only this initial phase of waking up, if you wish. After that, this reaction becomes physiological, or at least habitual. So whenever you see, again, whatever media is saying, you believe the opposite by default. So it's also reactive, it's also physiological in the end, right? Or at least habitual, as I've said. And before I describe the third stage, I have to get back to my previous video about not events but processes, or events versus processes, whatever I call it. So, where I talk about how we can only perceive events, right? We can't perceive processes. So in order for us to perceive a process, we have to, what I call, eventify it, turn it into an event. Then it would be perceivable, right? So, when you do, and it's like the one of the possible pathways to this third stage of perception of news. So when you actually do your own research, like legit, and you eventify processes on your own, when you perform some sort of, or read at least, some meta-analyses, like in medicine, or some like long-term analytical planning of some institutions that specialize in something, when you like read reports from some research or organizations or something like that, when you look at the economic stats, the demographics specifically, on your own, and you kind of trying to build a bigger picture, that's when you're definitely not reactionary. It's you are proactive. You're not a subject of influence or an object of influence of the news, of the media, but rather you are creating your own news in a way, right? You're doing your research and you're saying, okay, well, maybe this is gonna happen, maybe this is gonna happen, this looks like it looks like whatever, the aging population would cause this and this and this, and maybe it would cause this and this and this, etc., etc. So you're trying to eventify all these large-scale processes and phenomena that are observed in society, politics, economics, science, wherever else. So in this case, you are not reactionary, and this is the qualitative difference of this third stage with respect to the previous two. So the third reaction, even though I call it reaction, I just told you it's not, to the news has to go beyond personalities and sort of obvious centers of power, except yourself and maybe your close circle of friends and family, because these people, including yourself, are your center of interpretation, if you wish, your baseline, right? Your little tribe that you're ultimately interested in prosperity of. So this third level allows you to finally transcend these rigged and essentially false contradictions and various, geopolitical interpretations or whatever. What a garbage term, by the way, right? Geopolitics. Like, imagine British Empire in the 19th century ever being concerned with anything geo-oriented, right? It was global already, so it spanned the whole globe easily with no trouble. Even though actually some curious cases were observed in particular, because, we haven't had instant information transfer, right? People had to send actual letters on actual ships to, bring any orders or receive any news or whatever else. So there was, for example, the Battle of New Orleans in 1815 between the British Empire and the United States. After, it occurred 2 weeks after the peace treaty has been signed. So they just didn't know that the peace is already there. So they still fought, which is kind of funny. So yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, so all of these surface level actors that are presented to you in the news, like the China or the United States, a Democratic Party, Elon Musk or whatever, they don't matter on this third level, because you're looking at supposedly deeper layer of reality, whatever that means, not the one that is given to you in the news again. So, and by the way, like I briefly mentioned, the analysts, various, public intellectuals, they are also political figures. So whatever a public intellectual says is a political statement. It's actually the piece of news. It's not the analysis, actually. Analyses are rarely getting into news, if at all, actually. So this is what I'm talking about, these long, 300-page reports that no one reads. Well, this is what you should read, actually, not what some sort of expert on Chinese foreign policy will tell you on Fox News or wherever else, or even on Twitter, even though it might serve as sort of a guideline if you're a complete newbie in the subject. Okay, so on this level you understand that the groups of interest are first and foremost, and moreover, and more importantly probably, they are mostly invisible, right? So there are these deep, flows, deep tendencies, deep trends, deep processes that you have to eventify, because what they eventify for you in the news, it is politically charged. And politically charged for these political actors that influence you through the news, through the media, not you as a political actor. And you should be a political actor. Well, this is kind of a prescriptive statement. On this third stage, if you wish to embrace it, let's say, you should become a political actor of your own and make your own political agenda, all right, in a way, and perceive the world through these lenses. That's what I'm talking about, essentially. Otherwise, any obvious conflict that is presented in the media is, only a pawn in their game, as Bob Dylan's saying, or rather, you will become a pawn in their game, alright? So on this third stage, you recognize your own group of interests and its agenda, and then you follow from that in your interpretation of what's going on in the world. Essentially, at this stage, you can ignore the news completely. Because, again, the news is supposed to be reactive. It's supposed to provoke a response, whether it's positive, where you just blank believe the news, or it's negative, where you just blank believe everything that is against the news. And you don't have to deal with it. That's what I'm saying. But of course, every now and then you may take this drug, at least for fun. Thank you for watching. The eons are closing.